Okay, guys, welcome. We have a pretty short one today, and just two of them today. We're talking first about standard of living, and then about a little bit about rise of corporations. Now, you've probably heard and read and seen things, things like how the other half lives, but you've seen a very different level of I guess comfort. Some people being very, very wealthy, others being, without the total opposite of the scale, having nothing. But one thing that we have seen, for the most part, is that standards of living tend to get better. Now, you can always point to, certain, let's say, 10 or 20-year periods where, there's some adjustment needed, and perhaps things don't go as smoothly as we thought. You might even take a few steps back. But if you look, let's say, at larger chunks, 75, 50, 75, 100 years at a time, you can certainly see that standards of living are getting better for the most part. There's always going to be a group or some groups that are unfortunately left behind. But as a whole, you could say that standards of living should be and usually have continually gotten better. And this is true even though despite there were terrible working conditions. If you think about a book, like The Jungle, or things of that nature, which will be certainly talking about those types of things as we move on. But they really were getting better. Most people, I should say, were actually better off than they had been 30 years earlier. Why? Well, agricultural revolution, we have better food or more food, better fed people. The industrial revolution provided more clothing and even more houses, even though we know that some of them were um, you know, not the greatest conditions in the world. In addition, most people's wages increased significantly. Now, this was not to the point where they were wealthy, but still, they certainly increased. Now, the problem with this is that if the cost of living rose faster than wages, then families would suffer. And in some places, that did happen. And so, sure, you're making more money, but if everything is way more expensive and you're only making a little bit more money, then that's not really going to benefit you. But more evidence. Americans also began to enjoy a higher life expectancy. I think men in the United States are 78. 77, somewhere like that. I think women are a couple years older, or they are expected to live a couple years longer than men. Uh, in addition, because of better diets, better medical care, better housing, all these contributed to people's longer lives. Other inventions, I know these things we take for granted: flush toilets, canned food, so you could have all types of nutritious food throughout the year, refrigerated rail cars to transport perishable items from long distances, and I say discovery, meaning that we knew that the vitamins existed, but we didn't really understand how they benefited the individual, and we still are always finding these great benefits of, let's say, green tea, or what's it, acai, or there's always a new superfood coming, but we start to understand at least how these particular vitamins work. And of course, we already mentioned better clothes because of mass produced clothing. Well, along with the standards of living increasing, you also saw the beginning of what we'd call a corporation, a very, very large business. And of course, at this time and still today, competition among businesses are very, very fierce. And this required a constant drive to improve the product. So you're always looking to make a better product and reduce the costs to increase profits. Now, you can say, okay, well, how do we reduce costs? Well, one of the biggest ways for cost reduction was at the expense of the employees. Lower the wages, lower the wages. If you raise the prices, then maybe people might not buy it. But if you lower the wages, well, then that means that you will get more profit. Um, Also, to improve profits, companies spent more money on advertising, which of course, because it costs more money, caused them to seek even more ways to reduce costs. Now, we see advertising as obviously ubiquitous in today's society. You can't even go, to YouTube or even watch a video on CNN. Even if the video takes like 45 seconds, you're going to watch a 30-second ad. It's like, but it's only 15 seconds difference. It's just advertising is everywhere, and we've seen it increase over and over and over and over again, and a lot of money. Who knows how much it's going to be, but something like $1 million for every 30 seconds in the Super Bowl ad that's coming up. I mean, people spend a lot of money on this thing. So what happens is there's a spiral of constantly seeking new ways to reduce costs and increase profits. And it was really difficult if you are it's difficult for everybody, but if you're a smaller business, it was even more difficult. And so incorporation became an increasingly popular way to raise revenue. So every time you see an Inc., a INC at the end of something, that stands for incorporation. Now, incorporation, the reason why that's important is because it allows a company to sell stocks to shareholders. And there are specific steps you have to take to incorporate, and that's more of a legal aspect of that. But it does allow you to sell stocks. And when you sell part of your company, a share of your company, it's to a shareholder, and they own a percentage of the company. Now, it could be extremely small, 0.00001%, or if they own, a large, millions of shares, maybe they own 30, 40, 50%. But it is a percentage of the company, and it could be very, 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 very small, or in some cases, very big. Now, the important part is the shareholder can only lose as much money as he invested, even if the company goes bankrupt. So the worst that could happen, if you spend $100, let's say, to buy stock in some company, and the company goes bankrupt, the only thing you can lose is $100. Now, of course, you can gain a lot more, but you can't lose anything more than you invested. And that, I think, was really allowed people to, the average person, before this, rich people were the ones that are investing in stocks, but the average person now can invest in stocks. And you have to understand also that when a person buys a share of stock, that money, the money they pay, the $100 that we paid to buy a share of the stock, goes to the company, and the company can use that money for whatever they want, but to expand their business mainly. Maybe it's to build a new factory, maybe it's to hire new employees, maybe get new machinery. But the idea is that you sell a portion of your company so you can turn around and use that money to expand your company and, well, make more money. All right, guys, that's all we have for today. Thank you so much for listening.